just kneel down and ask for forgiveness, and there's the rosary, and then the rosary even has a smell of like a scent of like
Mary?
no roses. No of roses. Yeah,
Because it's rosary, bro.
yeah, but like the little pearls, like they smell like roses. They bring it from the Vatican. Oh,
Okay.
I just want to.
Okay, let's come together.
Being blessed by the Pope. No, I'm
Okay,
serious.
so
Yeah.
I'm gonna start off by saying maybe something very controversial and perceived to be very hateful as well. So I apologize if you're offended by this phrase.
I'm already offended.
You could just cancel me.
Cancel.
Okay, here's the statement: the Pope and the Catholic Church, they are the agent, not ancient, agent of evil and the Antichrist. Okay, this is something. So we're not saying like the person Pope himself. We're not saying he's like evil, or we're not saying the individual like Catholic, like they're like working under Satan. But we're just saying how the Pope position, papacy, and the Catholic Church as a whole, they're being used by Satan. That's what we're saying. Okay, so you're gonna see that if you go to some Adventist church, they're very like anti-Catholic, and there's that anti-Catholic sentiments. Some of you guys grew up with that mindset, okay, and some of you guys didn't. So it depends on what Adventist church you go to. But I'm just letting you know there's some of that sentiment. But I'm going to also explain why. Okay, and by the way, historically, Protestants and Catholics never had a really good relationship. Nowadays, it's pretty chill. But even before, not only the Adventists, but a lot of different churches have believed this. Okay? But we're going to get to why we believe this specifically. All right, now we're going to go to Daniel chapter 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, by the way, it's not the same king anymore, right? Remember in Daniel 2, it was King Nebuchadnezzar. It's the son, okay, Belshazzar. Daniel had a dream. Okay, not the king now this time. Daniel had a dream, and a vision passed through his mind as he was laying in bed. He wrote down the substance of his dream. So he had a dream, he had a vision. And so let's see what he had a dream about.
Oh,
Abel?
okay. Daniel said, "In my vision at night I looked, and therefore me were 4 winds of heaven churning up the great sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea."
Okay, so he has a dream, and then he sees ocean, and then out of the sea, what happens? 4 different beasts come out. Okay.
The first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it.
Okay. So lion with wings. But what happens to the wings? It gets ripped off, and then all of a sudden, what does he do? He like stands up like a human being. Okay, kind of freaky.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Does he
dude.
lose his paws? I mean,
All
I don't know,
right. So that's the first
Sorry.
beast. Okay. Let's keep going.
And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up in one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It told, "Get up and eat your fill of flesh."
Okay. So second, it looks a little more normal than the first one. It's a bear, and then what did it have? What was the characteristics? It was tilted on one side, and then also what? It has 3 ribs in his mouth. Okay, just finished barbecue, Texas barbecue. Okay, next.
After that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads. It was given authority to rule.
Okay, so what's the third beast? Leopard with what? 4 what?
4 wings.
4 wings and 4.
Is it
Four heads.
Oh, 4 heads.
Okay, so freaky looking creature like him. Okay, let's go to the 4th beast.
After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns.
Okay. So what kind of animal is it? We don't know. We don't know.
Beast.
Okay, we don't know. Some kind of beast. Okay. And then what are some of the characteristics?
The 10.
Iron teeth, and then it has
10 horns.
10 horns. Okay, so something like, but we don't know. We don't know if it looked like this, but just the rendition. Okay.
Stuff I had nightmares about.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. So I know some of you guys, Adventists, grew up Adventists, already know about this and had dreams about this. So not the most friendly, kid friendly, definitely. All right. So if you had this kind of dream, what interpretation meaning would you give to them? Okay. So go get together. I know for Adventists, you guys already know the interpretation. Try to be creative. Okay. So go for it.
Which is like
So
Daniel.
you go first.
Oh, thank you. No, no,
Yeah.
okay. So just like Daniel had the vision, each each of these beasts would have to represent like.
No, this is not Daniel. This is you.
Oh,
Like if you had this dream.
Yeah, you had this dream. So what does it mean? You think?
Oh yeah, that was it.
Yeah, like all these different beasts coming out.
4 different events
That was like a radiation
that
bomb.
that are gonna happen.
That's how they say Godzilla.
Um, and each represents
no, Godzilla
has
was
a
existing.
different
It was
representation because they're
Yeah.
all like a little weird. I mean, a
It's the end
lion,
of the world.
they have wings, that's in
It
common.
depends how big they are.
And all of a sudden
With the
to
human
Iraq,
mind.
yeah, with the human mind, it was like, I'm sure, it doesn't say it could talk, but if it has a human mind, I'm sure. I mean, it could be symbolic, I don't know.
So the
And
lions
so
of
then
the
he was
Bible,
able
the bear
to
had 3
stand
heads.
erect like a human. And so,
The
like,
leopard
okay.
had 4 heads.
Leopard.
And then the other one, so forth and so forth. So like, well,
Yeah, no beast with 10 horns.
they
So 4
really,
events.
yeah, 4 events that something's gonna happen
To you.
to me.
Any good fun interpretations, meanings?
Or something's gonna
If you
happen
had this
in
kind
my
of dream?
life. Not necessarily
So you think of lions, you
directly,
think
but
of
it
like-
could be indirectly.
About your life. So what about it? What about it? What about it
It
then?
could be family, it could be friends, it could be betrayal, it could be all sorts
Like
of
something
stuff.
negative then.
It could be, yeah, most
Or
likely.
positive.
Yeah, well, I would say negative because
Negative.
beasts are not.
It got rid of its
I mean,
wings
you're
and
not
it
getting
snatched
like
up
a
like
little
man.
fluffy
Think like a
kitten,
man.
you
Yeah.
know? Like,
Well, but you also
The
have
creation of
to.
humanity.
They're all
I
predatory
mean-
animals, yeah.
Yeah, but you also have to remember that in the
But like
Bible
an
they
elevated
usually
human.
go
Yeah,
with
an
beasts
elevated, like
rather
we are
than
the king
like
type
Yeah,
thing.
had
animal
bear.
or like
Yes.
Yeah.
a young cub or
Yes.
something. You know,
Okay.
they
Yeah.
just always say
And then-
beasts.
The bear.
No, there's like
Wow.
lamb.
oh, well,
Yeah, but
what would you say
they
that?
actually say the name. You know, they don't.
The go forth
This
and
is in
conquer
general.
type thing.
So something about your life, but something negative,
Alright.
like
It
some
could be
some kind of
negative. It
negative.
could be
Yeah,
negative,
yeah.
yeah.
Definitely not a let's go buy a lotto ticket.
You know.
Yeah, but no, it doesn't say. Furthermore, where they're like, they obviously look scary for one because I mean that would tear our flesh as we are not eternal, and so that would be fearful. You know, if I was eternal, then I'm like, what would it matter? You know, they have horns, they have this. You cannot harm
Yeah,
them.
we're human beings.
Yeah,
They're very harmful animals.
Yeah.
Even now.
Yeah.
We put them in a cage.
Yeah. Even a cat could be harmful. But, like thinking about it, I'm like, okay. But God gave us the authority to rule over the entire earth.
To either run somewhere or fly
And so-
somewhere because it's vigilant.
It can go like
Yeah.
4 dimensions.
So that could be
Yeah.
that as well. So,
Yeah, it can go up,
Yeah.
down.
And it can
so
run.
yeah, we could rule the
So
world,
it's becoming
even when
swift,
they're
so
like massive
We've
like
become
that.
enlightened. We've conquered the world.
What does it
and we're
really
swift
mean?
to
I
travel
don't know.
around.
But I know there's gonna
And then
happen
the
something,
last one
some
would be
event.
It's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. Something major,
something is,
Uh-huh.
minor,
Uh-huh.
but something.
Yeah.
All right, let's come back.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, Kev.
I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. I approached one of those standing there and asked him the meaning of this. So he told me and gave me the interpretation of these things. 4 great beasts or 4 kings that will rise from the earth.
Okay. So what do we know about these 4 beasts? They represent what?
King.
Kings again. So very similar to chapter 2, right? It was all about like kingdoms and kings. And so, oh, these are different kings. It has nothing to do with my life or Daniel's life or whatever, okay? But it represents kings. But it doesn't tell us further than that. So, Bible scholars, these are just their interpretation, okay? They believe the first one is Babylon, represents Babylon, okay? And here's different reasons why. Okay, you don't have to necessarily believe it. These are just, again, interpretations because the Bible itself doesn't tell us exactly what these animals represent, but we think it's this. Number one is if you go to Babylon, their main symbol was actually a lion. Okay. Number two, what is this whole like wing plucked off and this kind of thing? Well, we didn't go over it, but in Daniel chapter 4, you guys can actually read it. It's a really interesting story. So do you remember in Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, right? And then it was basically like, hey, there's all these kings before you, or there's all these kingdoms, but ultimately, who's the ultimate king? It's God. But Nebuchadnezzar, what happens is in Daniel chapter 4, he looks at everything he has and he's like, I'm the best. I'm the greatest. Okay? And then God humbles him. God actually gives him a mind of an animal. And he lives like an animal for, I think it was it 7 years? Yeah.
I just read this one.
Yeah.
7 passings.
Yeah, 7 years. Okay?
But it
And
says
so-
that there's a tree there where it's like the tree is this tree of life, and they cut it down, which is like him being.
Yeah. They give him like an illustration of what's
Then
going
it
to
says,
happen.
But the root will stay with iron and bronze or something.
Really?
One of the two metals.
I forgot.
Anyway, sorry.
Okay. So that's the wings being plucked off, right? But also, and then it says a mind of man was given to him. But we see that end of Daniel chapter 4, that Nebuchadnezzar, he becomes restored because he humbles himself before God. And so that's what we think, the mind of a man given to him. That's the description. So it's describing King Nebuchadnezzar, but also the kingdom of Babylon as well. Okay, next one is Medo-Persia. If we follow the same like pattern, remember one of the description was that it was tilting. It was leaning towards one side. Well, it's because it's two kingdoms, and the Persians actually became the dominant power eventually. So they started equally, the Medes and the Persians, but eventually the Persians just became stronger and stronger, and they took over. So maybe that's why there's this.
Because it's
Balance.
Darius and Xerxes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. The 3 ribs represents the 3 different empires or countries that they took over to establish this empire. So not only did they take care of Babylonia, but also Lydia and Egypt as well. Okay, so that's why there's that 3 rib, and they're crushing it. Okay. Next one, Greece. We think the 4 wings, they represent speed, because we know that the Greece empire, they conquered so quickly. They almost conquered the whole world, they said. Alexander the Great conquered the world, and he died at age 32. So again, that shows how fast they did it. And then the next one, the 4 heads and also the 4 wings, it represents the division after Alexander. So it didn't just become just one empire afterwards. The 4 different generals, and here are the 4 different generals that the power of Greece, it's split into. So maybe it's portraying that. Okay. Next, we think it represents Rome because of, do you remember what kind of teeth he had?
Metal.
Iron.
Oh.
It was iron. And same thing as iron from this statue as well. Yeah? So we think, oh, this represents, it represents Rome. Okay, in Daniel chapter 2. And then the 10 horns, it represents the 10 different tribes after the Roman Empire collapsed. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then the terrible appearance, maybe it's talking about the cruelty of the Romans, because they were the most cruel out of all the empires. Okay, so if you kind of look, if you take this interpretation, I would say most churches would take this interpretation, by the way. Then you could see that Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7, they're actually the same. Okay, so again, Babylon, Middle Persia, Greece, Rome. So it's consistent then.
Do we like which year in Babylon's time was this? Was
It's
Daniel-
towards
was
when
it 539?
Daniel chapter 2 was written more towards probably like the middle area. And then Daniel chapter 7 was written towards the end.
Because now he's like in his 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's getting pretty old, and then it's Belshazzar. And we know that it was under Belshazzar's reign that Middle Persians came and conquered. Yeah. Okay.
Picture. Does he have a human in his hand? The dinosaur?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, yeah.
The church, right? It's represented.
He is a person.
Yeah, it's a person. The dinosaur. Went from
All right, let's keep going.
Look at the Pika.
After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was the fourth beast. So we talked about the fourth beast. And it had 10 horns. We talked about this already. But it describes it a little further. I didn't tell you guys in the beginning, but it's going to describe it further, okay? While I was thinking about the horns, the 10 horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. So he's looking at the fourth beast, the 10 horns. He's looking at the horns. He's like, what's these horns? And so all of a sudden, 3 of the horns fall off, and 1 little tiny horn comes out. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being and a mouth that spoke boastfully. Okay, so very, very weird. Okay, so something like this, we think.
That's what I had nightmares about.
Okay.
That's- oh.
Again, if you grew up Adventist, you have nightmares about this. Okay. By the way, Daniel chapter 7 doesn't describe to us exactly the 4 beasts, because Daniel doesn't seem that interested about these 4 beasts, but he's very interested about this whole phenomenon. So he asked for more interpretation. So let's see what's going on.
And I wanted to know the meaning of the fourth beast, which was different from all the others and most terrifying. With its iron teeth and bronze claws, the beast that crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head and about the other horn that came up, before which the 3 of them fell. The horn that looked more like imposing than the others, that had eyes and a mouth that spoke boastfully.
Okay, so same thing. Okay, same description that we know, but he's just describing, I want to know more about this beast. Let's keep going.
As I watched, this horn was waging war against the holy people and defeating them, until the Ancient of Days, God, came and pronounced judgment in favor of the holy people of the Most High. And the time came when they possessed the kingdom.
Okay, let's keep going. So this horn is I'm going to go a little fast here because we only have 10 minutes left. I didn't know that we don't have enough time. So we see that the horn is attacking God's people. Okay, let's keep going.
He gave me this explanation. The fourth beast is the fourth kingdom that will appear on earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling down and crushing it. The 10 horns are the 10 kings who will come from this kingdom. After them, another king will arise, different from the early ones. He will subdue 3 kings. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people and try to change the set times and the laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and half a time.
Okay, so again, we know that the fourth beast is the Roman Empire. Okay, we think. Okay, and after that, the 10 horns are the 10 kings that will arise after this kingdom collapses then. And then this horn right here, he will take out 3 of the kings, and then what's going to happen? What are some of the characteristics? He's going to speak against God, Most High, and then he will also oppress the people, holy people. And he will try to change the set times and the law. He'll try to change time and law, okay? And then it will be delivered into his hand for a time, half a time. Okay, sorry, I'm going to go over this really fast. So we think this little horn is actually the Pope. Okay, not like one Pope, but the papacy itself. Okay, number 1, it rose out of the fourth beast. We know that the Roman Catholic Church came out of the Roman Empire. Okay, next, it appeared after the 10 horns. I'm going to explain what that means. It started small, but rose to better than its followers. So it was very weak in the beginning, but it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And we see the same thing that happens after the papacy. By the way, the papacy appears after the Roman Empire collapses, and then it splits into the 10 kings. Okay, it puts down 3 of the kings, so that 3 of the first horns were plucked by the roots. So we see that the Pope, or whoever this little horn is it gains power because it gets rid of 3 other kings. And that's exactly what we see with papacy. Okay, we see over here, okay, 10 different kings of the Roman Empire, and then the Vandals. I don't know how to pronounce these. Okay, and then the Pope becomes really, really powerful. In the beginning, he's not that powerful. He's just a religious leader, but he becomes not only a religious leader but a political leader as well. And so he destroys 3 other kings, and he rules over. Soon afterwards, he starts ruling more and more and more. Okay, let's keep going. It had eyes like the eyes of man, and it spoke great things and spoke words against the Most High. And again, we see that the papacy basically say, I am the mouthpiece of God. Okay, they say that. It was to wear out the saints of the Most High. We see that they do a lot of persecution against Christians. It was to change the time and the law. We know that they changed the Sabbath from Sabbath Saturday to Sabbath Sunday. They changed it. And they're not like quiet about it. They're like, oh yeah, we can't do that. Because they believe that the Pope has the power to do anything. Because he literally is God on earth. He's a representative of God. Okay? And so they also changed, we know, that they actually also changed the 10 Commandments as well. Okay? So we see this is the original 10 Commandments over here, but they got rid of number 2. Why did they get rid of number 2? Because they worship like statues of Mary and stuff like that. So they're like, we got to get rid of that. And so they also, Sabbath day, they don't believe that Sabbath day is that important anymore, right? So over here, they took out number 2, and then they changed the wording. So instead of saying Sabbath day, it just says, keep holy the Lord's day. Okay? And then because they took number 2 out, like they can't go from 10 commandments to 9 commandments, right? So what they did was in number 10 over here, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. They just split it. They just split it into neighbor's wife and then neighbor's goods. And so if you look at Catholic Bible today, then this is what you will see today. Okay? And they're not like secretive about this. Again, because they believe as a pope, he was given the right to do that. And that's why if you look at like the Pope and what the Pope says in the Catholic world, like this is a big issue, like a big thing for them. Because they believe like they're like literally seeing God. And they're literally hearing from the voice of God. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. The next part is going to be a little bit hard, but I'm going to try my best to do it. Okay, so right here, the holy people, okay, will be delivered into his hands for what? Times. Half a times. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, this is going to be very important to the whole 1844 thing. But I'm going to try my best, okay? So number 1, we know that this phrase, times, half a time, it doesn't only appear here, but it also appears in Revelation as well. And it appears 7 different times, okay? There's a time and year principle, okay? So times means 1 year. Okay, time means 1 year. Okay, so this is what we call day-year principle. You could find it in Ezekiel chapter 4:6. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. So time means 1 year, times mean 2 year, and half a time means half a year. So altogether, 1 plus 2 plus 0.5 is? 2.5. Come on, Kevin, 3.5. Okay, or 42 months. Does that make sense? So I know I'm going fast, but so far so good? Mm-hmm. Okay. So therefore, if we do 42 months times 30 days, it becomes 1,260 days. Mm-hmm. So again, remember 1 day, when it's talking about prophecy, it represents 1 year. And that's day-year principle. And so 126 days represent 1,260 years. Okay, now, some of you guys are like, okay, people, like, they're taking the Bible way too seriously. How do you know this whole number is true or not? We can verify it because in Revelation 12, it tells us that times half a time actually literally means 1260. Okay, I'll show you guys. Okay, right here, a woman fled. This is from Revelation chapter 12, verse 6. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. And the woman represents the church, God's people. And same thing, remember, it was the holy people will be delivered. Yeah? Okay. I'm going to show you one more though, okay? The woman was given again, same woman, right? Same woman was given the wings of a great eagle so that she may fly into the place prepared for her in the wilderness. So they're saying the same thing, it's just adding more details. Where she will be taken care of for time, half a time. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we're not just saying like these dates, it's like random dates and like we got it out of like someone's butt or things like that, okay? We're literally trying to tell you that 3 times half a times, it means 1,260 days. Now the controversial thing is, does 1,260 days actually represent 1,260 years though? So there is the controversy. Okay, I'm just letting you guys know. Okay, but at least Seventh-day Adventists, we believe this is actually years. So whenever we read prophecy, not all dates. Okay, but when it comes to prophecy, 1 day represents 1 year. Okay, so if these were all true, was there ever a time where the Pope had no power, but for 1,260 years that the Pope actually had power and loses power? And we say, yes. Okay. 538 AD was the collapse of the Vandals. Oh, no. The Ostrogoths. Okay, 338. Remember, we said after the 3 kings have fallen, the Pope is going to have power. So 530 AD. So that's the beginning when it starts to have a lot of power. And then we know that in 1798, okay, it loses power because, do you know what happens in 1798? French Revolution happens, and Napoleon gets the general to go and drag the Pope out of the church, which represents the collapse of the Catholic Church, the power of Catholic Church, or at least the symbolism, or the beginning of it. Okay? So we see that this happens exactly the way it's supposed to be. And the Bible foretells exactly the amount of time that the Pope was going to be in power and it's going to lose power. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we think, again, not because we don't like the Catholic Church because of a random reason or the Pope, we think, oh, this horn, okay, it represents, okay, the Pope and the Catholic Church because Daniel 7 wrote it. Does that make sense so far? Okay. Oh, my bad. We actually have a lot of time. For some reason, I thought I had to finish by 11:30. Okay.
I was going to say, I feel like
I thought it was
Okay, we have 30 more minutes. Okay, very good.
a house speaker or something.
we're
Okay.
15 minutes ahead now.
Okay, good. Any questions about what I just described so far?
One note.
Okay.
Revelation 12:6
Uh-huh.
is 126, 1260.
What about it?
I don't know. It's just weird. There's
All right,
1,060.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
This was identified in Revelation 126.
Sure. Any other? Sorry, I went fast. For some reason, I thought I had to finish by 11:30. Any other question?
What's the why an eagle? Does anyone know why 2 wings of the great eagle?
The 2 wings?
Yeah, is there significance around an eagle or not?
No, not sure. I think people say certain things, but I forgot. Yeah. All right. So again, let's go to discussion question. Do you think this argument is convincing enough? Okay, that the little horn actually represents the Pope and the Catholic Church, and that this whole timeline thing, time, half a time, they're gonna have power. Like, do you think it all fits? Does that make sense to you, or do you think no? These Seventh-day Adventists and these Bible fanatics, they're like going way
Is there any
too
other
deep.
denominations that follow the same timelines?
I would say most of the nowadays, just churches in general are not very interested in Daniel and Revelation.
Okay.
But I would say during this time, 1844, and a little bit afterwards, most people thought this was a Catholic church. So most people believed this was common belief during that time. Yeah. So it wasn't only like small group of Seventh-day Adventists who believed this. There was quite a people who believed that the little horn was actually the Pope. Yeah. Okay. But also because, the Protestants and the Catholic Church, they didn't have a good relationship either, though.
I mean, his cap looks almost like a tooth, like a horn. You see that?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so anyways, get to your groups. Do you think this argument is solid? Do you think it's good or no?
Yeah, right?
Go for it.
I think it wouldn't be if we didn't have the dates,
all-out war with Catholics.
like the time and time.
I don't think like as far as the dates go. I mean, I don't know. Nobody will know. Even I think it's somewhere in
But
the
for
Bible.
this one, it's
Kind of
there.
weird cookies.
I mean, nobody will know for sure when
Sure what?
when like the end of time is gonna come.
Oh, that one, yeah, only, I mean, we love
I don't know.
you
Yeah.
only the Father knows.
Yeah.
What was
That
our
day.
name, guys?
But we're talking about this one.
Sorry, Miss Coombs. I mean, what is really convincing is that at least the Ten Commandments, that's great. And the changing of the rules and things like that, yeah, that makes total
Here's the
sense.
math.
It's just very basic.
3.5 years.
I think that should be sufficient evidence not to continue down the same path.
Because the day is
Did
No, I
they
think this
consider
argument,
months to
we're
be
talking
30
about
days?
this.
Uh-huh.
really the
Oh, this
Father.
one? Yeah.
In the Jewish calendar, yeah.
It
Like
may
the
be.
Pope being the Emperor.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Could
in
be.
Ezekiel, that's where you get Ezekiel 4:6.
Uh-huh.
Where they
The
say,
day-year principle.
If we didn't
So we're trying to
have,
reach the 1844.
Did they define that time
Then
as equal to
probably
2
it
years?
So all the
be
numbers
just
are
like
there.
us making
And
stuff
so we're,
up.
Uh-huh.
the question
Yeah.
is this
It doesn't
convincing?
reveal it to us,
Bible
but that's what we
actually
take.
uses that,
We
then
think.
it's- Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we know that
But after that,
time
that
times half a
comes,
time
what's
for
gonna
sure
happen.
is
It's
1,260 days.
I
And
mean,
then
at
I
that
think they
time
calculated
we're
it.
kids.
They realized,
Yeah.
oh, that's what we
Yeah,
have.
but how is it gonna
There's
all
like,
like
during the Great Awakening or something.
Oh, yeah.
unfold?
well,
You know,
okay.
it's like we really don't know. We have
So
like a
here,
rough
Ezekiel
idea
4:6, he says,
My first thing
of
was,
like the
well, how
changes
many
there's a
of the
couple
days,
sentences, and it says,
or
I have laid
I
on
don't know,
you
getting
a
rid
day
of
for
the
each
Sabbath,
year.
No, but
probably.
they already did that.
I mean, everybody else
And when
did.
you
Yeah,
have
but,
completed
like,
them,
really
lie again on
enforcing
your
it.
right side, then you shall
Enforcing
bear
it
the
Oh,
even
that
more.
testimony
goes to
of
the end
house
of
of
time.
Israel.
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
I
These
need
days,
eventually to send you all.
I have laid on you a day for each year.
That's
Oh, so
coming.
someone must have transgressed for 40 years. So you said 40 days, that's equivalent to 40 years.
I mean, we try to tell the Muslims to take back the Holy
So the argument against that, some people say that's only in Ezekiel. That shouldn't be.
Ezekiel 4:6.
You guys convinced?
There was an attempt to reclaim the Holy Land.
I'm
In order to reclaim being
I'm okay with
holy
math,
people,
but,
and
I
just-
don't
You're okay with what?
I'm okay with math, but this is something different.
It's complicated, huh?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think for us it's more just like, we've heard it so many times. That
You're
it's-
over it.
Yeah, like,
You wanna teach it?
I mean, it's there. Huh? No. It's interesting. I mean, all of it is interesting, but I feel like like our churches, we have way too many, like,
Prophecy stuff.
yeah,
This is our main thing, though.
that is our main thing,
Yeah.
yeah. But sometimes it's nice to have a break, because every campaign we do is mostly
On this, yeah.
like about
Yeah.
this stuff.
Then the woman fled into the wilderness where she was as he
We should offer a
prepared
church
for God,
like a cruise ship, man.
that they should feed her.
A what?
Should the cruise ship analogy with these campaigns, like, hey, come to our church, it's gonna be gravy, and then we hit them with this.
Where did it talk about
We
time
trick 'em?
times?
Yeah, just lure them in, like, yeah, we're gonna be gravy.
Give
and all
him,
of a
bring
sudden,
him
hey,
the
we gotta talk
hors
about
d'oeuvres, the
something.
wine, and after that, put him in a
Where did they
closed
mention time
confined.
times and half a time?
Look.
Here's your weapon.
Oh, that was in a dream.
Are you ready to join us?
Right here.
Daniel 7:23.
Isn't it great? I think this is the first time for them, so they're looking into it deeper.
Yeah. I mean, when you first hear about it, it's like, wow.
I know it's been in there.
It's interesting when you hear about it first as a kid, you know. It's just more like that little horn thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they always show the visuals all the time. Like every time they show the visuals. It's so ugly. I always hated seeing that. So ugly.
I didn't grow up with David. In the Catholic Church never talks about the end times like that.
And then Kevin, this is
You want
in
to lie.
Revelation,
Yeah.
talking about same event. One describes it as 1260 days. One describes it as time times half a time.
I'm sure there was things that happened.
The great controversy, right? Isn't that like
Why it didn't turn out into an all-out war or something?
they always give that book out to people all the time. The great controversy.
Yeah, because great controversy describes some of these things. All right. Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah, here. So
Concerns.
this is a dream, and then he says for
No.
time and.
Yeah.
and
So
a half.
what are we supposed to do with the information given?
We'll get there. But one thing for sure, I think one thing we can
Well, we
say,
have it. I was like,
I think one
okay,
thing we can say is the Bible, when it's, when it says this is going to happen, it actually happened. So it's very trustworthy. So that also means, again, like the whole like Jesus coming back, like that's going to happen as well. All right.
10 kings.
Okay, so we went over
The
this.
3 kings fell, both rises.
So again, Babylon,
Both Israels.
Middle Persia, Greece, Rome, and then over here, okay, again, the divided kingdoms, again, the horn within this little tiny thing right here, again, we think it represents the Pope and the papacy. Okay? Now later, it's going to be important because later, we're going to see all of these different beasts again in Revelation. Okay, so just remember, just put it on top and then we'll see it again. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Tracy?
As a light thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were open.
Okay. So after the activities of the little horn, it shifts into some kind of scene in heaven. Okay, and what kind of scene does it describe? God is on his throne, and then there's a whole bunch of people.
Court.
It's kind of like a court scene. Okay, like the books are open and the court was seated. So,
Judgment.
okay, some kind of judgment. Does that make sense? Okay, let's keep going.
Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time.
Okay. So we see that God has some kind of judgment, and then after the judgment, then the little horn, which is, we believe, the papacy, okay, gets destroyed.
And by vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed.
By the way, when you see in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and when Jesus says, I am the Son of Man, this is what he's referring to. So people look at it and they're like, oh, Jesus is talking about his humanity and how he's a human being. That's not what he's referring to. He's referring to this. And do you think this is does this describe a human being? No, this describes a very divine being. Okay? So this, okay? I'm just referring back to that. So Jesus actually says, I am this. So this refers to the second coming of Jesus. Okay?
Which is why, is that why no one could recognize that? Because it's like the New Testament was happening then. If you weren't an expert in the Old Testament of the Torah, he could be saying these things and you wouldn't be picking up.
Yeah, you would not be picking up
Which
on
is why
these
they're
things.
like, I don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. But he was talking to Jewish people, but Jewish people knew that. And that's why when he says things like, I'm the Son of Man, like Jewish leaders would get super angry because they know he's referring to this. Yeah. But most Jews knew this because they had the Old Testament by the time Jesus is born. Yeah. So yeah, non-Jews, not the Gentile. Yeah, they wouldn't know. Yeah, exactly. So when you see Paul speaking to Gentiles, he doesn't reference a lot of these things because he knows that they don't know this. Yeah. All right. So the timeline, it seems like, is again we're looking at Daniel chapter 7. There's a little horn, and it's in power, but it goes down in power, and then we know that there's going to be judgment in heaven. And only after the judgment in heaven finishes, God will set up his kingdom. So that seems like that's the timeline that we see in Daniel chapter 7. And so I'm not going to go into it. We're going to go into it more in depth soon. But it seems like, again, there's this whole idea, if we look at this again. So SDAs basically say, in 1844, Jesus went into the most holy place in the sanctuary. And then we have a term that is used called investigative judgment, where God is basically like on his throne and he's judging people. Not in the sense that like, Abel, you're doing this wrong again. This kind of, not this kind of thing, but he's just looking at all over history. And he's basically saying, these are the people who believe me and these are the people who don't.
So how did we get to 1844? Because
We haven't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have the parts of it yet right now.
Yeah, so we stopped where the Pope was arrested.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. So not yet, yeah. We haven't got to 1844 yet. I'm just going back I'm just showing you guys that. So the timeline is, again, we believe in 1844, Jesus started his judgment in heaven, basically. And this is what we call, traditionally known as the investigative judgment. And once he finishes the investigative judgment, then the Son of Man, as we saw here, Son of Man will come on the clouds of heaven. And that's the second coming. Okay. So once again, we saw the same exact thing, but in Daniel chapter 2, it gave us more it detailed more on this part, the 4 kingdoms here. Whereas Daniel chapter 7, it focused more on the last part over here. But it's the same exact pattern. Okay? And the most important thing is that, again, we see both of these things in Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. All of these kings, all of these kingdoms will happen, and they seem very powerful and no one's going to overtake them, it seems. But in the end, it's God's kingdom that's going to be established at the end. Okay? And so again, this is a picture of the second coming. Okie dokie. All right. All right, let's review and then review quickly, and then let's go over 4 and 5 and 6 together. So go back to your groups. Go for it.